Okay, this is for Public Works. My name is Jason Temple, and the Public Works consists of sanitation department, streets department, building maintenance, lake maintenance, which is new this year, and fleet maintenance. And just kind of starting off at the top here with our revenue forecast at 2.6 million, compared to the 2020 budget of 2.6 and a forecast of 2.5. It's fairly flat, and in some cases it's actually it's just pretty flat going across there is what we're projecting for revenue now. In some cases, last year we did have a rate increase on the sanitation, and this year, looking at our forecast, it's actually gone down less than budget, and the question is why. And the reason that we are seeing it on our records is because the commercial sanitation has significantly cut back. Our commercial business has significantly cut back on their the amount of dumpsters and the amount of pickups that they were wanting, and that was a pretty significant cut this year. So we are trying to keep that in mind for next year, even if COVID-19 relaxes a little bit and commercial businesses increase. We still are going to get a jump in new homes, anywhere from 50 to 100 new homes potentially next year, which will be new customers. And but still, we're just proposing to keep that revenue projection flat and work with that. Compensation, again, it's just showing about a 5% increase off of 2020, 2.0 versus 1.9. The forecast is proposed at 1.7. Operating expenses at 2.0 compared to the 2020 budget of 1.8. Forecast is at 2.2. And if you kind of compare, the reasons behind all that is in our compensation, the forecast is at 1.7. For the most of the year, we have not been able to staff our sanitation department in the areas where the people who pick up the trash and put it in the back of the truck. For the majority of the year, we've been struggling with anybody to hire anyone full-time in that area. Now, as of today, I think we have 2 to 3 full-time people on staff, and then the rest of the year, we have had to hire out contract labor. And that's where you see the increase in operating expenses that's being forecasted at 2.2. That's because we've had to hire contract labor. Now, and that's worked, but that is it's not always reliable. Since the beginning of the year, we have probably hired over 45 people to be our throwers in the sanitation department for that area. It's a very, very difficult task. It's hard to sustain, and I just want to make that note for you. Net operating public works is at 1.475 million versus the budget of 2020's budget of 1.1. The forecast is still around 1.438. So again, we're kind of matching that forecast for 2021. Capital 1.0 million versus 2.0 in the budget. In public works, that's a 50% reduction in capital, and that's just part of budgeting for next year. We're going to have a very lean budget. We're still going to do all the same things in streets, crack seal, pavement preservation, culvert replacement, but just quite a bit less. So you got your net public works at 2.499 versus the 3.2 in 2020, and we're projecting out for 2020 at 2.5. So we're pretty much trying to match what our 2020 projected forecast is going to be. There's no staff increases planned for 2021. And that's it, kind of in a summary for public works and for all those businesses. You have any questions in those areas?
I guess I have a comment. Speaking of hot buttons, streets, of course, is a hot button. When I look at the trend of the capital expenditures, 2019, 1.2 million, 2020 forecast 1.1 million, 2021 budget 1.0 million. I think the conventional wisdom is them numbers are going in the wrong direction. All I can say, this isn't a question, I would just express personally concern and probably a need to look at that probably more seriously and ask ourselves, is that adequate? What are we really doing to ourselves when I look at that trend?
Do you want to explain to them that we look go through the whole picture and analyze, and that's what we came up with.
You're right. I mean, it's, over the long haul, we're gonna have to look at the GM's, the 5-7 year strategic plan and start gearing up for that. But for this coming year, we looked at the whole picture as far as trying, what do we actually need to make it through 2021? And we put money in each of those categories to match what was needed to get by in 2021. Now, that buys us time to plan strategically for the future as well as funding for the future as well.
So part of that, if you notice our 2019 actual compared to this, you're really looking at about roughly a $180,000 drop. As Jason and Charles have mentioned, we're trying to be very strategic and not go and spend a whole lot in this next year so that we can take those funds and actually have it in order to start really gearing up and revamping our stuff with funds already set aside for it. So 2022, we are hoping to kind of hit the ground running with funds we know we've got. This also includes the sanitation project that we want, or that they want to bring forward. So I'm going to jump over here to, hang on. So if I come back over here, they're wanting to switch to the side load sanitation trucks, which will help on the staffing issue with the trash throwers and so forth. This is the amount that would be for a loan for those sanitation trucks, but they have it, it's a lease program that they replace the trucks every 2 years with conditions being met and so forth. So, and in the end, they would actually still be saving some money from the method that we're using right at the moment. So while his capital itself isn't going up due to cash flow on that side, we do have a liability that we are proposing, which would be the $304,000 for a 1 year's amount. So while you see that $200,000 is kind of $100,000 more over, but it's on the liability side, if that makes sense.
We've done a spreadsheet presentation to the GM, and I know I owe you guys a presentation on that, and we're ready to do that in the very, very near future as far as getting you the details on that sanitation transition program. So that's everything in Public Works with a very, very strategic plan, budget plan for next year.
Just for a point of information, how many buildings are in the POA that have to be maintained?
Well, don't give me a guess. I know we have.
It's a lot.
Yeah, over several hundred.
Yeah, several hundred.
Yeah, it depends on what you count.
165.
165 buildings.
Okay.
Now that's building maintenance that goes in here, but now that's part of that allocation. Some of this has gone down. So for example, the Coronado Center, instead of it being in Jason's budget for any capital improvements and a new roof, that is now in recreation. So this budget kind of does come down a little bit because it's picked up in its applicable places. So that also kind of, like I said, addresses your drop. It's spread.
Yeah, you may see in some of the other budgets, the fleet, as far as the fuel and maintenance, vehicle maintenance, those are all being charged for those cost centers now, as well as building maintenance, as far as capital items. And yeah.
Okay, speaking of which, there was a project for a pretty thorough review of the buildings. Has that project been completed, and I assume how much of that has been absorbed into this budget?
Well, the conditions and needs assessment, all that data was collected, and you know, I don't know if we do have an asset manager now that is incorporating all that data into a large asset management database that I think will give us the tools. I wouldn't say I don't say we haven't generated any strategic plans off of that yet, but is in the development stages to use that data, that information as a tool to plan for the future, strategic planning in those areas.
Back to Tom's first question, the road repairs that people have been talking about for quite a while. Are those included in the capital line?
Yes.
They are.
So all of the road repairs are going to be in that?
Well, and you know, what we have is like street maintenance, street preservation. We've got several, $150,000 planned for that. That's gonna be very similar to what we did this year, where staff goes out and fixes large repair patches and holes, and some of them they'll fix themselves, and some of them they'll bring in a contractor with a paving machine and lay out. Lots of crack sealing, signs, striping, culvert replacements, just not on the scale that we've been doing in the past.
Let me I know we can skip the capital on this one. So, here's the new trash bins for Public Works, which is in the capital amount. Sorry, I know this is small, guys. This 52 is in capital for the trash that they want to present. Your streets, here's some of the 560 for the pavement preservation, culvert rehab, some of the equipment that they're needing to do it, and so forth. Buildings, they've got 10,000 for a pipe yard gate and a fence and fleet. Lakes has a vehicle, which is what all makes up that capital amount that you were seeing on the summary page over here. So most of that is in streets. Does that help answer a little bit?
Yes.
Good? We'll talk about public utilities.
All right, so let me close that one. And there's your summary.
Okay, so public utilities has 6 divisions in it. Consists of a full-blown water treatment plant and staff, 2 wastewater treatment plants and associated staff, a water line maintenance crew, there's 2 of those, a wastewater line maintenance crew, 1 of those. We have electrical division, which mostly focuses on lift stations, new and existing, the maintenance of all that, and also a construction division that puts in all the new water services or extensions, so forth in that area. And that particular component has been transferred back to line maintenance. The folks are going to be maintaining it, so if they build it, they'll build it good enough where they don't have to maintain it very well. So that's kind of supportive in that nature. Also, there's administrative and meter reading staff in this public utilities department. So at the top, the revenue is proposed for 2021 at 7.8 versus the 2020 at 7.2. And let me explain a little something about our revenue. Included in that revenue is a projection for 100 new homes for next year, all right? Not to be too optimistic, but we're already closing in on 70 new homes this year. So next year could easily hit that. And with that comes new grinder pumps at each of the new houses at $5,500 a piece, and that's going to be an extra $550,000 of revenue associated with those 100 new homes, and that's in that 7.8. Likewise, that's revenue. It also goes out of our budget as an expense in our capital. So down there in the capital where it shows it's 2.0, 550,000 of that is part of that as an expense. And so new water services, new sewer services, and new grinder pumps at each of the new homes are counted as a revenue, but they wash out as an expense in the capital. So if you see that, that's part of the reason why that number is much bigger than what the 2020 budget is, because we're counting on about 50 more new homes than we did in 2020. Compensation, 2.0 in 2021, 2020, 2.0. Forecast is 1.9, fairly flat in that area. We don't have a whole, not too many, we have a few staff that are below $11 an hour that we're expecting to get placed at the minimum wage for that. Operating expenses at 2.1 in 2020 budget is 2.3. Forecast was 1.9. And so we were asked, and that's showing like an 8% reduction there. We were asked, by Jim and the board and y'all to try to find ways to save money, and we've reduced areas of expenses in those areas. So we've just tried to reduce the budget. That's what we were asked to do. And so we trimmed it up there a little bit. Total net operating at 3.6 million versus the 2.9. Again, that goes back to the 100 new homes that I was talking about earlier. And remember, that's also a wash. It comes in as revenue, it goes out as an expense. Same reason as you look at the capital at 2.0 versus 2020 at 1.75 versus forecast 1.6. Again, that's projected on growth. We're counting for those more homes associated with the new services and the new pump stations that goes with those. On the capital, at 1.6, 2020 was 1.1, forecast is 1.8. The forecast is 1.8, so we've tried to kind of stay, the actual in 2019 was 1.5. Try to stay kind of in that ballpark capital-wise. We've had, obviously, like to do more. But some of the things that we've cut out for next year is we're not planning to do any major wastewater treatment plant improvements that have always been anywhere from the $500 to $1 million range. But there are a lot of other things that are going on too in that matter as well. If you go down, just go down the line there in the 2021 budget, the GM did a great job of explaining all of the funds and the rollovers and the things that kind of come to that point where you see the 923, 132. And as you go down, we are paying our bond debt service at 290. The repayment to the general fund is proposed to be paid off this year. If you look over at the 2020 forecast, there's $1 million there to pay off the general reserve fund that the utility department has been paying on $500,000 a year for the past 4 years. Utility reserve is still scheduled to be paid at $399,207. And then the utility capital fund reserve that the GM was talking about, looking towards being funded at 1.8. So we'll have cash in the bank at the start of our 2022 year.
So to help kind of block this, if you look, double click here, we're taking the net income from the 2021's budget, if all goes according. We're adding the rollover that wasn't used, which because utilities is supposed to be self-contained, we're not supposed to kind of be those piranhas dipping in on their stuff. That's the 923 rolls down with everything. That's what gives us the 1.8 to actually end up rolling over at the end of the year. So they can start doing the capital projects that they need to start taking on.
And if I could add just to some of the capital highlights, for next year, is we still have quite a few pumps that have to be replaced in our system or maintained, that we're maintaining and doing a good job of that. But one of the things I want to tell you is that if you're hearing any complaints about odor issues and things like that, we get a lot of that here in the village, and we are budgeting over $100,000 to buy ozone generators to kill that odor in the area. So we have. And this is a result of consulting with our PhD engineer out of Houston who has an oil field experience of dealing with H2S gas that we're looking at doing. It's a few of our locations here, a few of the hot spots here in the village. And looking at, I have high expectations for that to be successful. And that'll be a tremendous improvement to the lifestyle, the people who are living in the proximity of those areas. If you ever drive through it, and we all have experienced that. We're looking for improving your drive-through experience with all that too. It all goes together, making this a great place, a better place to live. And so just a couple of those highlights are there for that. And we have a few pieces of equipment that we're going to try to replace as well.
Yeah, so here's breakdown, I'm going from the department, you've got 100,000 for pump, house, and parts. You've also got the line, 110 for line valve replacement, water extensions, and new service. We've got 50,000 for your phase 4 of the capital SCADA, or SCADA, or,
SCADA, that's control systems at the wastewater treatment plants.
and the 45 for pump replacements here. This one, we don't have any notes on, but I'm sure you know what it is, for PU 30.
That's a 35, that's your wastewater line maintenance. And so those are extensions and services and just replacement parts. And that was transferred from the PU 40, which you saw a while ago. And then the PU 40, that's your lift station group, they're group electricians, they do most of your lift station maintenance. And that's where all the pumps,
Yeah, there's your tank, your odor control and some more tanks.
right, the new home grinder pumps are there in that 590, or see the 550,000 above that, that's your new homes. And then the 590 below that, that is just regular pump replacements throughout our system.
And then PU 50 is just our utility bond, so nothing going on there other than what we gotta pay.
Not too exciting, I know, but it's part of business. Any questions? Thank you very much.